The market was alive with strange lights and sounds filled with creatures from across the galaxy. Daniel walked slowly, looking at each stall with wonder. He was a human explorer, far from Earth, and he had seen many odd things, but nothing prepared him for this place. Merchants shouted in alien voices. Machines hummed with energy, and the air smelled of burning spice mixed with sweet fruit. He moved carefully, not wanting to attract too much attention. Humans were rare here, and some eyes followed him with curiosity. As he walked past a stall selling glowing crystals, a loud voice called out. The merchant was tall, with 4 arms and skin that shimmered like metal. He grinned at Daniel and said, "Human, I have something you cannot refuse." Daniel stopped more out of politeness than real interest. He had heard that line many times before, usually ending with someone trying to cheat him. The merchant pointed toward a shadowy corner of the stall. Daniel looked and saw 2 figures standing very still. They were twin sisters, their bodies slim and their faces hidden under long veils. They wore simple clothes, but something about them made Daniel pause. Their eyes glowed faintly from beneath the veils, not like the bright neon signs of the market, but like quiet stars in the night. The merchant clapped his hands and said, "For one small price, they are yours." Daniel blinked, then laughed. He thought it was a joke. Who in their right mind would sell people, let alone mysterious twins? He shook his head, smiling, and said, "Good one, you almost fooled me." But the merchant did not laugh. He leaned closer and hissed, "I do not joke with humans. Take them, or leave them. But the offer is real." Daniel frowned, unsure if he had misunderstood. Maybe it was some kind of cultural game. He waved his hand, trying to brush it off. "I'm not interested," he said. Still, he felt the weight of the twins' gaze. Their glowing eyes followed him, steady, silent. Daniel walked away, but the market no longer felt fun. Whispers followed him from the crowd. He caught fragments of alien speech, words like curse and danger. A group of old traders shook their heads as he passed. One muttered, "Foolish human, he does not understand." Daniel felt uneasy. He told himself it was nothing, just local superstition. But deep inside, a spark of curiosity burned. Later, as he found a quiet place to rest, he could not shake the image of the twins. They had not moved, not even to shift their weight. They stood like statues, yet their eyes glowed as if alive with secrets. Daniel remembered their silence. It was not the silence of fear. It was the silence of knowing something others did not. He thought about going back to ask questions, but the warnings from the crowd echoed in his mind. He had traveled long enough to know that every rumor carried a seed of truth. Still, he could not ignore the feeling that the twins had looked directly into him, not just at him. It was as if they had seen something hidden inside his heart. Night began to fall over the alien city. The market lights dimmed, and strange lanterns floated above the streets. Daniel sat on the steps of a stone building, listening to the distant music of alien instruments. Yet his mind returned again and again to the strange offer. Why him, out of everyone, did the merchant call to? And why had the twins' eyes burned so brightly? A part of him wanted to forget it, to laugh it off and move on. But another part whispered that the merchant's words were more than a sales trick. Daniel felt a chill. He remembered how the crowd looked at him, how their faces turned serious, how the air grew tense when the merchant spoke. It was as if the whole marketplace had been waiting to see his reaction as the stars appeared above. The city, Daniel sighed. He was far from Earth, far from safety, and yet here he was, caught in a mystery he did not understand. He closed his eyes, trying to rest, but in the darkness behind his eyelids he saw them again. The twin sisters, standing still, their glowing eyes fixed on him. His laugh at the merchant's offer now felt hollow. A quiet voice inside him whispered that he had just stepped into something far greater than a bargain. And that night had only begun to fall. Daniel could not sleep. Even though the city outside his window had gone quiet, the image of the twin sisters stayed sharp in his mind. He kept seeing their glowing eyes, steady and calm, like 2 small moons watching him. The market noise was gone, but in the silence, he could almost hear whispers, faint and cold. He sat up on the bed, rubbing his face. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. Yet he could not shake the feeling that those sisters were somehow connected to him. The next morning, Daniel returned. To the market, he told himself he was only curious, nothing more. The same merchant was there, smiling wide. "Ah, the human comes back," he said. "Do you want to see them again?" Daniel frowned but nodded. The merchant waved his hand and the twins stepped forward. They moved together, perfectly in sync. Every gesture, every step, mirrored the other. It was almost unnatural. Daniel expected them to speak, but they remained silent. He looked closer now, trying to understand. Their faces were no longer hidden by veils. Their skin was pale with a faint shimmer, their hair dark like a shadow against the light. And their eyes, those strange glowing eyes, watched him without blinking. They were beautiful, but there was something unsettling, too much perfection, too much silence. Daniel cleared his throat. "Who are you?" he asked. His voice sounded too loud in the still air. The twins finally spoke, but not separately. Their voices blended as one, soft but echoing. "We are no one." Daniel froze. The sound was strange, almost like music. The words sent a chill through him. The merchant chuckled. "See, they are not cursed, only quiet. They will obey. They will follow." Daniel shook his head. "They're not things to be traded," he said firmly. But his eyes stayed on them, drawn and curious, as Daniel turned to leave. An old alien woman grabbed his arm. Her skin was wrinkled and her eyes sharp. She whispered, "Do not take them, human. They bring night with them. Always night." Daniel pulled his arm back, unsettled. "What does that mean?" he asked. But the woman only shook her head and vanished into the crowd. Daniel left the market but felt no relief. The twins' gaze burned in his memory. That night, when he returned to his small room, he found himself listening again. Strange sounds came from nowhere, soft voices like two people speaking in unison. He opened the window, but the streets were empty. When he turned back, he swore he saw shadows moving across the walls, shaped like two figures standing side by side. Sleep finally came, but it was restless. In his dreams, Daniel walked through endless dark corridors, and at the end of each one, the sisters waited for him. They did not move, did not speak, only stared with those glowing eyes. When he woke, sweat covered his face. He whispered to himself, "They're following me." The next day, he went back again. He knew he should leave the city, but something stronger pulled him. He needed answers. This time, when he saw the twins, one of them tilted her head slightly, and for the first time, Daniel thought he saw emotion, a flicker of sadness. He stepped closer. "Why me?" he asked. "Why are you offered to me?" the sisters answered together. "Because you are the one who hears." Daniel's chest tightened. He had no idea what they meant, but the words cut deep. He remembered the whispers in the night, the voices that echoed in his dreams. They weren't random, they were real, they belonged to the sisters. The merchant laughed again, but Daniel no longer heard him. He was staring at the twins, realizing they were not silent. They had been speaking all along, just not with words anyone else could hear. And in that moment, Daniel understood one thing: whether curse or secret, the twins were tied to him now, and walking away would no longer be so easy. The city lights began to flicker as the sun set, and Daniel felt the same whisper from the night before curl through his mind. Until night comes. Night fell over the alien city like a heavy blanket. The glowing lanterns above the streets shimmered faintly, but the alleys stayed dark and full of secrets. Daniel walked slowly, his steps echoing on the stone ground. He had told himself he would avoid the market, avoid the merchant, avoid the sisters, but now, as the city grew quieter, he felt their presence even stronger. It was as if the night itself carried their whispers. His room was small, with a single window that opened to the city rooftops. Daniel sat near it, staring at the stars. He missed Earth, the comfort of familiar skies, but tonight even the stars seemed strange, as if they were watching him. A sound broke the silence, soft at first, then clearer. It was a voice, Or maybe two voices, blending together like a song. He looked around sharply, but the room was empty. Daniel stood, his heart racing. He knew the sound was not outside. It was inside his head. He closed his eyes and listened. The voices spoke in a language he had never studied, but somehow he understood. The words were simple, haunting. "We are here, do not fear us." He swallowed hard, his mouth dry. He whispered, "Who are you?" The answer came like a soft echo. "We are the night. We are the watchers." His hands trembled. He turned quickly and froze. The twin sisters were in the room, standing side by side, their glowing eyes brighter than before. They had not opened the door. They had not walked in. They were just there, as if the shadows themselves had shaped into their bodies. Daniel took a step back, his instincts screaming danger, but their faces were calm, almost sad. "You should not be here," he said. His voice cracked. "This is my room." The sisters moved closer, still in perfect sync. They did not touch him, but he felt the air grow colder. One of them raised her hand slowly, pointing at his chest. "You are the one," they said together. His heart pounded. He wanted to run, but his legs would not move. "The one for what?" he asked, trying to stay calm. The twins tilted their heads at the same time. "The one who can hear. The one who can see." Daniel's mind raced. He thought of the old woman in the market, her warning about night. He thought of the merchant's strange grin. He thought of the way the crowd had gone silent. Suddenly, the lantern outside his window flickered, then went out. The room plunged into near darkness. Only the twins' glowing eyes remained, shining like stars in the void. Daniel gasped. "What do you want from me?" The sisters answered, "Not what we want, but what you must know." They stepped closer, and Daniel felt a shiver run down his spine. Then, without warning, the walls of the room seemed to bend. The stones shimmered like water. The air rippled, and Daniel found himself standing somewhere else. He was still inside four walls, but the room was no longer his. It was vast, endless, filled with symbols glowing faintly on the ground. The twins stood before him, unchanged. "This is not your room," they said. "This is the space between." Daniel's breath came fast. "Am I dreaming?" he whispered. One of the sisters smiled faintly, the first real expression he had seen on their faces. "Dreams are doors. You opened this one when you laughed at the offer. You opened it when you returned." Daniel's chest tightened. He realized now that every choice he had made since arriving here had led him to this place. This was not random. The symbols on the ground pulsed with light. Daniel felt something in them, familiar yet alien. The twins stepped closer, and their voices overlapped again. "Your kind has forgotten, but we remember. We wait. We watch." Daniel wanted to ask 100 questions, but only one escaped his lips. "Why me?" The twins stared at him, their glowing eyes unblinking. "Because you are human, because you are the key." Daniel's skin prickled. He shook his head. "I'm just one man," he said. "An explorer, nothing more." The sisters both raised their hands, pointing at him again. "There is no just when it comes to your kind." The symbols on the floor flared brighter, and suddenly Daniel was back in his small room, gasping for air. The window was open, the lantern, outside, flickering back to life. The sisters were gone, only the echo of their voices remained. "Until night comes again." Daniel stood there, his hands shaking. He had laughed at the offer, but now the laughter was gone. In its place was fear, and a strange, dangerous curiosity. Daniel woke the next morning with heavy eyes. He was not sure if he had slept or only drifted between dreams and waking. His mind replayed the night again and again, the sisters standing in his room, the strange symbols, the words that echoed in his head. He touched the wall, but it was solid stone, as if nothing had changed. Yet deep inside he knew something had. He left his room and walked through the narrow streets. The city looked the same, merchants calling out, strange animals tied to posts, glowing crystals lighting the paths. But for Daniel, every shadow felt different. Every pair of eyes that glanced at him seemed to know something he did not. Whispers followed him once more, and this time he could almost hear his name among them. Daniel decided he could not ignore it any longer. He returned to the market and found the stall again. The merchant stood there, smiling as if waiting. "Ah, the human returns. Did you enjoy your night?" he asked slyly. Daniel's jaw tightened. "What are they?" he demanded, pointing at the twins who stood silently in the shadows. The merchant's smile did not fade. "They are what you make of them. Take them and learn, or walk away and never know." Before Daniel could answer, one of the twins stepped forward for the first time. She moved apart from her sister. The crowd gasped as if they had seen the impossible, her glowing eyes fixed on Daniel. "He must know," she said. Her voice was not blended this time. It was her own, clear and sharp. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The other twin joined her, and together they said, "We will show you." The merchant scowled and stepped back, muttering under his breath. The crowd grew restless. Some looked afraid, others angry. Daniel noticed how they avoided the twins, gaze as if afraid their eyes could burn through their souls. The sisters moved to him, close enough that he could feel the cold around them. "Come," they whispered, and for some reason Daniel obeyed. They led him through the crowded market into darker streets and finally to an abandoned building at the city's edge. Inside, dust hung in the air, and the walls were covered with faded marks. The twins raised their hands, and the marks began to glow faintly. The same symbols Daniel had seen in the dream place appeared on the walls. "What is this?" he asked, his voice shaking. The sisters spoke together. "This is truth, this is memory." They turned to him, their glowing eyes softer now. "Your people think they are alone. They are not. They never were." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" One sister stepped closer. "Long before your earth knew fire, long before your kind learned words, we knew of you." Daniel's chest tightened. He struggled to breathe as their words sank in. "That's not possible," he whispered. But the twins shook their heads. "It is. The galaxy fears what humans are. They hide it, they bury it, but we remember." Daniel felt dizzy. "Why do you care about humans?" he asked. The sisters looked at each other, then back at him. "Because we were made to guard the secret, because only with a human can the secret awaken." Daniel staggered back. "Guard, secret, what secret?" he demanded. The walls glowed brighter, and the symbols shifted like living light. He felt warmth against his skin, like the walls themselves were alive. The sisters' voices lowered. There was a war that erased names and histories. Humanity was almost destroyed before it even began. But something changed, something the Empire could not erase. That something lives inside every human. Daniel shook his head. "No, that doesn't make sense. I'm just an explorer, I'm no one." The twins both stepped forward, their eyes burning brighter. "And yet you heard us, and yet you saw." Daniel's hands shook. He wanted to run, but his legs would not move. "Why tell me this?" he asked. "Why not stay silent?" One of the sisters reached out, almost touching his hand. "Because silence is death. Because they will come for you. They will come for us. And if you do not choose, you will be lost." Daniel froze. A heavy sound filled the air. Boots striking the ground outside, voices shouted in a harsh alien tongue. The twins turned toward the door at the same time. "It begins," they whispered. Daniel's heart pounded. "Who are they?" he asked. The sisters' glowing eyes narrowed. "The hunters. The ones who fear the truth." And before Daniel could move, the door burst open, armored figures storming in, weapons raised. The merchant's grin flashed in the doorway. His voice rang out. "The human chose. Now he will pay." Daniel's world spun. He had come looking for answers, but all he had found were more questions, and now in this forgotten building with the glowing twins beside him, he realized he had stepped into a storm far bigger than himself. The room shook with the force of the door breaking open. Dust rained from the ceiling as armored figures stormed inside. Their armor was dark and marked with glowing red lines, and each carried a weapon that hummed with energy. Daniel froze, his back pressed against the wall. His heart raced. He had seen soldiers before, but these were different. These were hunters. The merchant stepped in behind them, his forearms folded with satisfaction. His metal-like skin reflected the flickering glow of the symbols on the walls. He sneered at Daniel. "I warned you, human. You could have walked away. You could have laughed and forgotten, but you stayed, you listened, now it is too late." The twins moved forward, standing between Daniel and the hunters. Their glowing eyes blazed brighter than ever. The soldiers hesitated, just for a moment. Their leader barked an order in a sharp alien tongue, and the hesitation ended. "Weapons." Rose, ready to fire, Daniel shouted, "Wait, I don't even understand what's happening." The merchant smirked. "You don't need to understand. Human curiosity is always its own punishment." He gestured at the twins. "They are a threat to the Empire, and now you are too. For speaking with them, for hearing them." Daniel shook his head. "That's insane. I didn't choose any of this." One of the sisters glanced back at him, her expression calm. "You did. The moment you stayed. The moment you heard." Her voice was soft, but filled with weight. Daniel swallowed hard, his knees weak. The hunters advanced, their boots heavy on the stone floor. The twins raised their hands, and the symbols on the walls pulsed with sudden light. A wave of cold air swept the room. The hunters staggered, their visors flickering. Daniel felt the air crackle with energy. He gasped. "What are you doing?" The sisters spoke together. "Protecting what must not be lost." The merchant shouted, "Do not let them escape." The hunters fired, but the blasts bent, twisting like smoke in the air. The energy dissolved before reaching Daniel. The twins' eyes glowed like suns now. The walls hummed, the symbols flaring as if alive. Daniel crouched low, covering his head. But then he realized the sisters were not just defending. They were showing him something, through the light and sound. He saw images forming in his mind. Cities burning, alien fleets blotting out the sky, and humans fighting against impossible odds. He heard voices screaming, voices crying. Then he saw something stranger. Humans standing beside the twins. United, glowing with the same strange light. He gasped and stumbled back. His vision cleared. The hunters were regrouping, stronger this time. The merchant's grin widened. "They cannot protect you forever, human. You will fall with them." Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to run, but the sisters grabbed his hands. Their touch was cold but steady. "Do not run," they whispered. "You are already part of this." The hunters rushed again, and this time the twins pulled Daniel with them. The walls seemed to melt away, shifting like liquid. The next moment, they were outside in a narrow alley far from the merchant's stall. Daniel staggered, gasping for breath. "How did we? What just happened?" The sisters only said, "We walked between." Shouts echoed from behind. The hunters were close. Daniel's heart pounded. "They're going to kill us," he said. One twin shook her head. "Not if you trust us." Daniel clenched his fists. "Why me? Why not anyone else?" The sisters looked at him, their glowing eyes softer now. "Because only you can hear. Because only you can carry it." The sound of boots drew closer. Daniel turned toward the dark streets ahead. His mind raced. He had no weapon, no plan. But he realized something. The twins were not cursed. They were hunted because they knew the truth. And now so did he. The sisters pulled him along, their voices blending as they whispered. "The enemy fears what you are. The enemy fears what you may become." Daniel's fear burned into anger. He looked back once, seeing the hunters' red lights cutting through the shadows. And for the first time, he did not want to run. He wanted to fight. But as they reached the city's edge, Daniel knew one thing for certain. This was no longer about curiosity. This was war, and he had already taken the first step into it. Daniel's feet pounded against the stone streets as the sisters pulled him into the maze of alleys. The night was alive with danger. Shouts and metallic boots echoed from behind. The hunters were fast, their armor clanking as they forced their way through walls and doors. Red lights swept across the alleys, cutting through the shadows like knives. Daniel gasped for breath, his chest burning. "We can't outrun them," he cried. The twins moved together as if they shared one mind. "We do not outrun," they whispered. "We move where they cannot." They turned sharply into a narrow passageway, and for a second Daniel thought they had hit a dead end. But the sisters pressed their hands against the wall, and the stones shimmered. The air rippled like water. Without thinking, they pulled him through. Daniel stumbled forward, almost falling. When he looked around, he realized the world had shifted. They were still in the city, but not quite. The streets looked blurred, the lights dimmer. The sounds of the hunters had grown faint, muffled as though coming from another layer of reality. He whispered, "Where are we?" The twins answered softly, "Between." Daniel touched the wall, beside him, but his hand went straight through it. He shivered. It felt wrong, like walking inside a dream. The sisters pulled him along, guiding him through this strange shadow world. They moved faster than before, gliding through walls, cutting through the city like ghosts. For a moment, Daniel thought they might escape, but then the hunters' lights pierced through the blur. They appeared distorted but real, their weapons humming louder. The merchant's voice rang out, mocking and cruel. "You cannot hide from us. The Empire sees through all shadows." Daniel's stomach dropped. "They can follow us here," he said. The twins' glowing eyes flashed. They should not be able to. Something hunts with them. The chase grew worse. Blasts of red energy tore through the shadow streets, missing by inches. Daniel ducked, his heart racing. A beam grazed the wall behind him, sending sparks flying like molten rain. He stumbled, but the sisters pulled him forward. "Do not stop," they urged. They reached the edge of the city, where ruined towers leaned against the night sky. The sisters stopped, their eyes blazing brighter than ever. "Now you must see," they said. Daniel frowned. "See what?" The ground shook as hunters closed in. "I don't need visions, I need a way out," he shouted. But the twins pressed their hands together and the air around them shifted. Daniel's mind flooded with images again. A great fleet, ships larger than mountains, hovering over alien worlds, humans fighting not with numbers but with fire and fury. He saw the Empire's armies bending under the weight of something they could not control. He saw the twins standing beside humans long ago, guiding them, protecting them. And then he saw darkness swallowing it all, wiping history clean. Daniel gasped, the vision snapping away as a blast hit the ground nearby. The shockwave knocked him down. Dust and debris filled the air. The hunters surrounded them, their glowing visors staring coldly. The merchant stepped forward, grinning. "You, see now, human, they are not gifts, they are chains. Give them to us, and you will live." Daniel's hands shook. His fear screamed at him to surrender. But when he looked at the sisters, he saw no fear in them, only calm. They reached out their hands to him. "Choose," they whispered. Daniel clenched his fists. He thought of Earth, of the history the Empire had hidden, of the truth that had been stolen. He realized this was not only about him anymore. The hunters raised their weapons. The merchant hissed, "Decide, or die with them." Daniel's voice cracked but did not waver. "I choose them." The sisters' eyes blazed like twin suns. Their voices blended into a thunderous chorus. "Then we awaken." Light erupted. Not fire, not energy, but something deeper. Shadows twisted and bent, swallowing the hunters' blasts. The soldiers staggered, their weapons failing. The merchant screamed in rage, shielding his eyes from the glow. Daniel felt the power surge through him as if their strength was flowing into his blood. For the first time, he was not just running, he was standing. The hunters faltered, chaos breaking their formation. The sisters pulled Daniel forward, and together they surged into the night. The city behind them shuddered as if it could not contain what had been unleashed. Daniel ran with them into the wildlands beyond the walls. His heart racing, his fear burned into determination. He knew the Empire would not stop. He knew the merchant would return. But now he also knew something else. He was no longer alone. The night stretched wide and dark before them, and as the stars watched silently above, Daniel understood. His journey with the sisters had only just begun. The night beyond the city was vast and silent. The stars hung like frozen sparks across the black sky. Daniel stumbled over rough ground, but the twins never slowed. They moved with strange grace, their hands pulling him forward. Behind them, the faint glow of the city still flickered. Red lights chasing, distant but not gone. Daniel's chest burned with exhaustion, but he forced himself onward. He knew there would be no rest, not tonight. They reached the edge of a wide plain, where jagged rocks jutted out like broken teeth. The air was colder here, thin and sharp. Daniel bent over, catching his breath. "We can't keep running," he whispered. "They'll find us, they'll never stop." The sisters turned to him together, their glowing eyes steady. "The night has come," they said. Daniel frowned. "What does that mean?" The twins stepped closer, their voices softer now. "You chose. You bound yourself to us. Now you must see what that choice awakens." Daniel's stomach tightened. He wanted to protest, to say he hadn't meant to get this far, but deep inside he knew it was too late. The moment he said, "I choose them," his path had changed forever. The ground beneath their feet began to hum, low at first, then louder. The rocks vibrated, cracks glowing faintly with light. Daniel staggered back. "What's happening?" The sisters raised their hands, and the air shimmered like a curtain. Stars seemed to bend, shadows stretching. The hunters appeared at the edge of the plain, their armor glowing red in the dark. The merchant's voice cut across the night. "It ends here, human. Surrender the twins or die with them." Daniel felt fear rise in his chest, but the twins stood firm. "You do not understand," they told the hunters. "He has chosen, and with him, we are complete." The soldiers raised their weapons, beams of red light firing across the plain. Daniel flinched, but the blasts dissolved before reaching them, bending like water around an unseen shield. The twins' eyes flared brighter, so bright Daniel had to squint. Then he heard their voices inside his mind, not just in his ears. Together, Daniel's pulse quickened. He realized they weren't speaking only to each other. They were speaking to him, asking, inviting. He hesitated, his hands trembling. But as the hunters advanced, as the ground shook, Daniel made his choice. He reached out, grasping both of their hands. A surge of cold fire raced through him. His vision blurred. For a heartbeat, he thought he was dying. Then the world exploded with light. The plain vanished, replaced by a vast expanse of stars, endless and alive. He floated there with the twins beside him, their forms glowing, their faces calm, their voices filled him. "This is the truth. This is why they fear you." Images struck his mind, humanity scattered across the galaxy, forgotten wars buried in silence, fleets erased from memory, yet always humanity returned, stronger, fiercer, refusing to vanish. The Empire had hidden this truth, branding humans as weak and fragile. But it was a lie. Humanity carried something that could not be destroyed, a force the twins called the Fire of Night. Daniel gasped. "I don't understand. What am I supposed to do?" The twins smiled faintly. "Not do, become." Their eyes blazed, and suddenly Daniel felt power moving. Through him, not his own, but shared. A force that twisted shadows and bent light. The same power that had shielded him, the same that had terrified the hunters. It was no longer theirs alone. It was his too. The vision faded, and they were back on the plain. The hunters stopped in their tracks, staring. Weapons shook in their hands. The merchant's grin faltered for the first time. Daniel stood straighter, his fear burned away. He could feel the power humming in his blood. The sisters beside him glowed brighter, their voices blending with his own as they spoke. "We are not prey. We are not cursed." The hunters fired again, but the blasts shattered in the air like glass. Daniel raised his hand without thinking, and shadows curled like armor around his body. The sisters moved in perfect rhythm with him, and for the first time Daniel did not feel like an outsider. He felt part of something ancient and unbroken. The merchant shouted in rage, "This is impossible. He is only a man." The twins turned, their eyes on him. "No, he is human. That is enough." Their voices thundered across the plain, and the hunters stumbled back, some falling to their knees. Daniel's heart pounded with fierce energy. He realized the Empire had been right to fear them, not because of the twins alone, but because of what happened when they stood with a human. The night grew still. The hunters began to retreat, their weapons dimming. The merchant glared at Daniel, his face twisted with fury. This is not over. The Empire will never stop. And with that, he vanished into the shadows, leaving his soldiers scrambling after him. Silence settled over the plain. Daniel's body shook as the power slowly dimmed. He looked at the sisters, their glowing eyes softer now. "What happens next?" he asked. His voice was quiet, but steady. The twins stepped closer. "Now the galaxy will come. Now you must decide if you will run back to your Earth, or stand with us against what is coming." Daniel stared at the horizon, the stars stretching endless and cold. He had laughed at the offer once, thinking it a foolish joke. But tonight had shown him the truth. He was no longer just a wanderer. He was bound to something far larger, something that would shake the Empire itself. And as the wind swept across the plain, carrying the last echoes of battle, Daniel knew his life would never be the same. The night had come, and with it, his destiny.